reason I believe in Bitcoin is because Bitcoin should accelerate into either scenario that plays out, because the growing number of people on the bottom end of the K do not feel like they're part of the system. And this is the part of the fourth turning that, if people haven't spent time, it's about losing trust.
Hello everyone, this is BTC Insight, and welcome to yet another deep dive into BTC Insight. Before we jump in, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't yet. You won't want to miss this.
Visser starts with Oracle's recent commentary, not because he cares about their margins or financial engineering, but because of what their orders reveal, the sheer scale and speed of AI demand. He frames the discussion through a simple but profound lens: training versus inference. Training is like going through high school and college, but inference is applying that knowledge in the real world. And right now, inference is exploding. Oracle's order book, valued at over $300 billion in a single quarter, dwarfs historical comparisons. To put it into perspective, Visser draws an analogy. If Yankee Stadium with 50,000 seats sold out for 126 years straight at $500 a ticket, the revenue would still fall short of Oracle's current demand. The size is almost incomprehensible.
There's been no positive take in terms of people talking, and what people are worried about is, will they ever get the money for this? What is an RPO? What's the margin on these? Are they going to have to take out? How much debt are they going to have to take out? Like, every question that came in, and I'm sitting there as people are asking these going, I don't care. Only part of the story that I cared about is the commentary from the company on the speed and size of the AI demand and where we are in the inference stage. So, I mean, we've talked since the day we got on here about how important inference is. I've written multiple papers, both for 22V and Substack, about the importance of thinking, to leave the learning function, the let's go to high school and college thing of training a model, to the, okay, now let's apply the knowledge that we gained at college in the real world. So stage 2 to me was all about where we are with Oracle. And this was a confirmation of how big the orders are, who they're coming from, how global it is. And what that says is, once this gets rolled out through AI agents, the profit margins are going to explode. The problem is, and the reason why I say I don't care about whether they make the money or they get the orders, is because my viewpoint is that 5 years from now is so far down the road that we don't know what things AI is going to come up with to disrupt Oracle and every other business. I don't care about that. What I care about is the foreseeable future, which is the next year and the next 2 years. We don't have enough infrastructure to support. And that's what he said. We need more CapEx. The reason that they'd have to take out more debt is because they actually can't meet the demand. So for me, the number one clear story as an investor is we need more compute. That's semiconductors. And this is an important thing with the Intel NVIDIA deal, which again, I don't think people have spent some time really understanding what we're going into, combined with Tesla on that side, and power. We need power and we need compute for the next 2 years until we get those. That you can build as many data centers as you want. You got to fill them with compute, and then you have to go. There's no doubt in my mind that we need both of those. And so the problem is gas turbines don't exist. There's a delay in those as well. So when you take Oracle's problem and then you take GE Vernova's problem and Siemens Energy's problem, and they've got all these orders, that's great. But then I just go do some analysis and I realize that, oh, gas turbines are going to make PMIs go up because there are no gas turbines. And that means we have to find all these hybrid solutions, which is what I wrote about last time. So this is a field day for people that look at Oracle, realize it's the greatest investment story when you can find a situation where demand is massive. I don't know if you're a Yankees fan, right?
Of course.
I don't think you probably didn't see my paper, but in there I just highlighted how big the number was. So if Yankee Stadium, let's say, used 50,000 seats the last 126 years, if they sold out at $500 a ticket, and I realize in 1900 it was not $500 a ticket, but let's just do it for sake, that comes out to $252 billion. Oracle had $300 billion this quarter in terms of orders. So the size is massive. So as a trader or as someone who's looking to make money, take the top down. I know the demand is real. I don't ever have to listen to DeepSeek again. There's no efficiency. I know we need power and compute. Oh my God, what's the power side? We don't have gas turbines. Okay, it spreads out and you have a tide that lifts all boats, because that means you need solar, you need batteries, you need all kinds of hybrid solutions. That should have been the story, not I don't trust Larry Ellison, and the margins what are they making on this? If you ask me a year from now whether Oracle is going to be a major story or not, I think they just kind of told us what the next 5 years is going to look like, and it's a big story. But I think people have to go elsewhere as a business to find the solutions. I'm not sure that Oracle is going to be able to meet these. So it becomes something that if you can find a company, and like I said, if I go to the power side and I look for batteries and I look for solar names, the reason I like starting there is because, again, the one big beautiful bill killed all people's belief in renewables. I think you just want to focus on power and compute. And that's why the NVIDIA deal with Intel, to me, combined with the Tesla Samsung deal a couple months ago, all three of those combined say the same story to me, which is inference is rising. And we're about to learn, we all know what CPUs are. That's Intel. We all know what GPUs are. That's NVIDIA. We're going to start learning what MPUs are for neural processing units. So when we start getting into that and understanding what that's for, which is for humanoids, for cars, for thinking in devices, we're going to start getting into a new world. There's another stage of this that's coming. And I think that's what those three do. And that's why I'd be focused on the compute, the power, and really starting to learn about NPUs.
Visser then zooms out to a macro lens, connecting today's events with the generational theory of the fourth turning. History, he argues, moves in cycles of 80 to 100 years, each culminating in a period of crisis and rebirth. Just as the Great Depression and World War II reshaped the global order, he believes we're entering another turning point, this time fueled by AI and technological disruption. He ties this to personal observations. His grandmother's generation avoided debt at all costs, while his mother's baby boomer generation embraced it. Each generation reacts against the last, and today's youth will again break with the past. In China, he notes, the Cultural Revolution created similar generational divides. Now, as AI disrupts every sector, Visser sees parallels. Old models of capitalism are cannibalizing themselves, and trust in institutions is eroding.
Everyone, particularly macro people, should really do their homework on the fourth turning. So one thing when I would spend my time traveling to China from 2007 to 2013, I started to really study the generational differences between the people I was meeting and their parents. And so this reminded me of the difference between my grandmother, who told me never to take debt, and my mother, who's a baby boomer. And the difference. So this generational shift, I think everyone that has kids realizes their kids, in a lot of ways, fight back eventually against the parents, and they start doing things that their parents told them not to do. They do that anyway. And so this fourth turning has a generational component to it, which I believe in. And I believe in this. And in China's case, it was the Cultural Revolution and the Cultural Revolution babies. Very different mindsets. And again, at a different time. The reason I haven't spoken about it by itself is because when I've talked to you, I've talked about Jeff Booth and Joseph Schumpeter. Now, in those cases, that is how innovation is destroying everything in its path, and that eventually capitalism will cannibalize itself. And that's where Bitcoin comes out. I think what the University of Michigan, I think the violence we're seeing across the country, the war that has happened with Ukraine, Russia, and when you read through it, especially with the technology, and you take the fourth turning and say, okay, basically you come out of a massive situation like World War II and the Depression, and then this leads to kind of 80 to 100 years, getting to a point in the fourth turning where we're getting close to a rebirth. And the rebirth comes from another kind of revolution or something going on. I believe that's what's happening. And I believe we're entering what will be the worst period. And I say the worst period not from a stock market perspective, but from this belief that AI is accelerating so fast. And when I say to people, flying cars, humanoids, living forever, stuff like that, I don't think they realize how disruptive that is to things. It's only when I say, okay, all fiat assets will be worth zero. Like there's no value. And I gave a speech to a family office of wealthy individuals, all families that have large amounts of money who have nothing involved in Bitcoin. And the person wanted me to speak to them. And the last time I was at his event, I realized that, oh, you guys want to hear negative things like this group because they have a lot of money. So they're scared of losing it. And I just said, you guys are all worried about the debt. Everyone talks about the debt. They talk about shorting bonds. The reality is, for everyone who has money, you should be worried about your assets. There's $175 trillion of net worth in the United States of America alone. That's net, that's X the debt. So when you go through this, everyone should be worried about what AI is going to do, because what I see AI doing is the ability to replicate everything. So we already went through this with Napster. We already went through, like, we've watched all of this technology happen, but now we're getting into artificial intelligence where everything will be able to be replicated, everything. And so when people go, what about real estate? I go, okay, think of replication, but now if you have a house and it's worth $30 million and someone buys a piece of land next to it and then they put up a house and they use humanoids to put it up and all this new materials that have been created by artificial intelligence, and it costs $10 to make, what's the value of your house? If the replication is $10, well, the insurance isn't going to give you $30 million for it. All houses go down in price. So my reality in this world is that the capital structure of the world will change. And that is what effectively the fourth turning is kind of taking us into. So it's really the merging of the fourth turning and Joseph Schumpeter. And I think the University of Michigan consumer confidence, it was in the great financial crisis that it was at these levels. It was in 2022 during the inflation situation. And then it was during the worst of Liberation Day. Those are the 5 times, it's been 5 times that it was at this level or lower. And now we're there with stocks at all-time highs, rallying, corporate profits there. I think it's because of the K-shaped economy, and I think it's because people are really scared about what's happening in the future. There is a term we use on Wall Street for when 2 charts start to divide like this. It's called alligator jaws, and they eventually close. So I do believe they're eventually going to close. So the point is, do they close with the bottom coming up and the top coming down a little bit? Or do we tax everyone up here and move it down and make everything affordable? I think this debate between the far left and the far right, they can fight it over. And I always make the joke that people will always vote for assets to go higher. If assets go down, pretty much everyone always votes this way, because you lose your job and then you can't afford anything. And that's why we've avoided the Great Depression again, is because nobody wants to hear the stories and live through what our grandparents, or at least my grandparents, lived through. And I heard those stories as a kid, and it affected kind of the way I thought about things in debt because of how much of an influence she had. I actually think there's a third alternative, and that is the innovation of abundance that is still disruptive. But in that case, it just brings them both down to about the same level over time. That's why when you believe in this stuff, and I reference moonshots on here,
podcast.
They talk about it all the time. They talked about it this week. Reid Hoffman was on. And I mean, most smart AI people will, if they're really honest, will say, I don't think there'll be any jobs. Well, if there's no jobs, then there's this K-shaped economy changes dramatically. And whether or not you agree with it, I think it has to be part of your distribution of outcomes. Now, to get there, there could be a lot of revolts, but the masses, when you do the numbers of the economy, and this is the problem, we say K-shaped economy. Okay, well, how many people are in the K, on the bottom level of the K, and how many people on the top level? It's getting very heavy on the bottom level, especially when you do it relative to the size of this. And so I think whenever that's happened in history, there's ended up being a revolution of some sort. I think technology is the democratizing thing of that, and that's just my belief. It could change, something could go on, but the reason I believe in Bitcoin is because Bitcoin should accelerate into either scenario that plays out, because the growing number of people on the bottom end of the K do not feel like they're part of the system. And this is the part of the fourth turning that, if people haven't spent time, it's about losing trust. So the University of Michigan consumer sentiment, to me, has a reflection of losing trust and hope in the economy. So Bitcoin is a trustless thing. It was set up first to deal with the fact I don't trust the banks. Well, now we're past the banks. I don't trust my employer. I don't trust the government. I don't trust the banks. I don't trust the currency. I don't trust the debt. I don't trust anything. And so I don't see how you all of a sudden get the trust back. And if you read the fourth turning, there needs to be an event. Well, I think AI is that event.
Jordi Visser's analysis challenges us to look beyond the noise. While many focus on debt levels, profit margins, or quarterly earnings, Visser urges us to see the bigger picture, an economy on the cusp of transformation, powered by AI, constrained by infrastructure, and reshaped by generational and technological forces. The next 5 years, in his view, will be defined by compute and power, the chips and the energy that make AI possible. But beyond that lies an even bigger story, the potential restructuring of capitalism itself as AI accelerates abundance and undermines traditional assets.
That's it for today's look into BTC Insight. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay on top of all the latest insights. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we'll catch you in the next one.